Hello, welcome to Meet the Public. I'm your moderator, Kim Russell. Today our focus is going to be on inclusion in public education. If you are a parent of a child who's in the public education system, this show is a must for you. Today our panel of experts includes Mrs. Lisa Strickland. She is a special educator in the elementary school. This is Mrs. Geneva Adal, and she is a fourth grade teacher. She is a general education teacher. And we have with us Mrs. Wade. She is the parent of a child with disabilities. To start off, let's talk about what is inclusion, Mrs. Strickland.
Inclusion refers to a philosophy of education that says that all students, no matter who has a disability or not, will be educated in the general curriculum. And a student with disabilities then is placed in the general education classroom. They have access to that curriculum, and the services that they need to compensate for that disability are brought to them by a special educator.
Why do inclusion? It seems like special education is a specialized educational plan. It seems like it might be easier to bring that child into your classroom where there are fewer distractions rather than try and go into a general education classroom.
Well, inclusion is not for everyone, but we do have a set of laws that mandates what we do in special education. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was passed in 1990, and one of the hallmarks of that law says that all students with an identified disability will receive a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment, which means that they will have access to the general curriculum as much as possible and is appropriate for whatever the disability is that they have.
Mrs. Adolph, you're a fourth grade teacher, and you have experiences with inclusion. Can you share those experiences with us?
Yes, ma'am. Inclusive setting is actually beneficial for more than just the students. I have had some experience with inclusive co-teaching, and I found it to be beneficial to me. I've learned a lot of strategies from the special educator that would help me with not just my students with special needs, but with all students. The students with disabilities also benefit from the social aspect of the regular classroom, and the students without disabilities benefit with they have an opportunity to interact with these students and become more familiar with students who have disabilities. So it's been beneficial all the way around.
Mrs. Wade is the parent of a child with disabilities. What have been your experiences with inclusion?
My daughter, who is now in middle school, began in a self-contained classroom where she had limited access to any of her peers without a disability, and I've seen a huge difference since she's moved into an inclusive setting. She has more friends. Students without disabilities are no longer, they're more accepting of her. They know about her disability, they will help her, and I've seen a huge difference in her social skills and the willingness of students without disabilities to come and help her. Before, when they're segregated, a lot of the time the children without disabilities are afraid. You know, they don't know about the disability, they don't know enough about it, but I think it's beneficial to everybody, the students without disabilities and the students with disabilities, and I've been very happy with the inclusive setting.
Yeah, you know, the students with disabilities often have a very fragmented day, and depending on how many disabilities and how many different services they receive, they can be pulled out for the majority of the day, although not in the same classroom, and they have a whole other set of rules to learn every time they go into a different classroom, and for a student with disabilities that can be kind of overwhelming. So letting them stay in the general education classroom more time during the day is actually probably a relief for them in that way.
Another law, recent, I know, we have all heard of No Child Left Behind, and that law also mandates that all students will have access to the general curriculum. So our administrators have found that in order to meet the requirements of all of these laws, that it is easier to place the student with the disability in a general education environment, and then they bring the services to them with a special educator coming in to co-teach with the general education teacher, and then there will be both teachers working with all of the students in the classroom at the same time. Sometimes they're there for a portion of the day. In some situations, they may be there for an hour to 2 hours. Just depends on the school.
What concerns do you have about inclusion?
One of my concerns was that I was afraid when she first went into the general ed classroom that the special educator would hover over her and that she would be singled out as, you know, different than everybody else. But it's worked out, I think, to everyone's advantage. As Miss Edall was saying before, she's learned strategies from the special educator, and I think all the students have benefited from having two teachers in the classroom teaching all of the students.
Mrs. Edall, do you have any concerns as a general educator?
Well, yes, actually, it's getting better now, but when we first started doing inclusion, we did not have enough planning time for myself and the special educator to get together and talk about what we were going to teach that day and how we're going to teach it. There are strategies that students with disabilities would benefit from that I may not be aware of, and if the special educator isn't given the time to, you know, educate me as to what they are, then we might be missing out on some things. And there have been times when the special educator and I did not have time to plan ahead, and she would just come in because it was her time to be in the classroom, and she would just kind of float around and help the students with their work, but it wasn't like she and I were both the teachers. And I think it's very important that the students see both of us as the teachers of both sets of students, that all the students belong to me and they belong to the other teacher as well. And so I think it's very important that we have that planning time.
Also, I think that in order for it to be successful, you have to have good administrative support. They have to make sure that you have that time in the day to plan. And that comes with administrative support. And they have to look at it in such a way that that both teachers are teachers in that classroom, that one is not just an aid to assist. So, and sometimes teachers that have been at it for a long time, they know what they want to do. They've got their philosophy, and they're not willing to turn loose of the reins, so to speak, and let someone new come in. And it takes a lot of cooperation between the adults involved, so it will be a successful situation.
Right, it's hard because those state assessment scores for those children will have my name on them, not the special educators, even though they are both our children, so it is a little hard to let go, but I think we are doing a better job of that these days.
I think it's a process. We're not going to get there from the first day.
That's right.
And it's something that we all learn from, and we learn from our mistakes. But if we keep what we're doing for our students at the forefront, what we do to help a student is what's important.
As a parent, I feel like my daughter's been at several different schools, and some of the schools I felt very much a part of and very accepted, and I was able to come in and receive help at any time. Other schools, I felt it was more difficult. So the more welcome I feel and the more welcome my daughter feels, it's just a better inclusive setting.
Comment that they'd like to make?
I'd like to share a quote from a parent of a child with a disability. And this parent had experiences with inclusion, and they felt like it was a good thing for their child. I cannot hide my child away. She must learn. It does not help if we keep her locked up for 18 years, and then all of a sudden I say to her, there's the world. Now you must find a place for yourself.
And that's the reason schools are moving toward inclusion. Thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like additional information on inclusion, please contact your public school or your nearest university. Thank you. Have a good day.